we were really on Zayin Amud Bet. Let's just go back. I said we'll go over this part very quickly. Zayin Amud Aleph. So we're still in search of a source. We finally found a source for Aseh Doche Lo Ta'aseh. This is, by the way, this is probably one of the longest Shakla V'Tariyas in Shas. We asked a question on Daf Gimel Amud Bet, and we're not going to answer it even for the next daf. Like, we're still handling this question. But, so we're trying to we found the Makor for Aseh Doche Lo Ta'aseh. We're trying to find the Makor now that an Aseh would even be Doche a Lo Ta'aseh that has Karet. To say that the Aseh of Yibum would even be Doche the Isur Karet of being with one's daughter or being with one's sister-in-law or any of these cases. So that's what we're looking for. The Gemara wanted to suggest that we learn from Achot Isha. We learned from Eshedach. We learned just like brother's wife is really an erva, and it becomes mutar for yibum. So any erva would become mutar from yibum. And then the Gemara said, no. This is a davar shehaya bichlal v'yatsa min haklal lidon bidvar chadash. It was something that was included in the klal of arayot, and then the Torah excluded it to teach me a chidush about it. So iyata yochol reshai lachziro lichlalo. You can't learn anything from it back to the original klal of arayot. Until the pasuk tells us, reconnects it back to the klal. So let's just read from where it says Halo Dami. It's Daf Zayin Amud Aleph. The first word on the line is Isur, Beisur, and then it says Halo Dami. So Halo Dami el davar sheya bichlal v'yatza lidon bidvar hachadash she'ata yachol lachaziro lichlalo ad sheyachzirinu lecha katuv beferush. Yibum by brother's wife, which is one of the arayot, that's like something that was in the klal of arayot, and then it was excluded to teach me something, and it was never placed back into the klal to learn back. Detanya, davar sheya bichlal v'yatza lidon bidvar chadash iyata rashai lachziro lechlo ad sheyachzirinu lecha katuv beferush. This rule. So Ketzad, what's the prime example of this rule? The source of this rule, the Gemara brings the classic prime example of this rule is the following: It's talking about a mitzorah. One of the korbanot that a mitzorah brings is a korban hasham, and it says that you have to shecht it the same place that you shecht the chatat, v'et ha'olah b'mkom hakodesh, and the olah b'mkom hakodesh, ki kachatat ha'asham hu lakohen. So it says the chatat and the asham have the same halachot. So the Gemara says, Shein Talmud lomar ka chatat ha'asham. What's it coming to teach me by saying the chatat is like the asham? I already know where it needs to be shechted. I already know where the blood goes. What are you teaching me by saying it's like an asham? So ma Talmud lomar ka chatat ha'asham. Lefi sheyatza asham mitzorah lidon bedvar chadash. Because Asham Mitzorah was included in all the other Ashamot, which the Torah talks about the rules. The Torah says in Parsha Vayikra, Zot Torah HaAsham. These are the rules of Korban Asham, and it says all the halachot of Korban Asham. So why over here do we have to say Kachatat HaAsham? So because the Asham of a Mitzorah was in that klal of Zot Torah HaAsham, and it was excluded. It was taken out to teach me a chidush. What's the chidush? That the blood is put on the fingers and toes, the right finger and right thumb and right big toe of the mitzorah. That was part of his process of becoming tahor. It would put the blood on his toe and on his finger and on his earlobe. So this is a chidush. This is a davar chadash. I might have thought that all the other halachot of asham don't apply over here. Once it was excluded from the klal to teach me a davar chadash, I can't reconnect it to the klal to learn anything from the klal anymore. So therefore, Talmud Lomar Ki kachatat ha'asham. Therefore, the pasuk says, no, kachatat ha'asham, to relate it back to the klal of asham. Ma chatat te'una matan damim ve'emorim legabe mizbeach, af ha'asham ta'un matan damim ve'emorim legabe mizbeach. The same way that the chatat requires blood to be on top of the mizbeach, or on the mizbeach, the blood to be sprinkled on the mizbeach, so too this asham requires blood to be sprinkled on the mizbeach. Meaning, I would have thought that the rule. Therefore, well, let's read the Gemara one more time. Vi lo ahadre kra hava amina lemay de nafak nafak lemay de lo nafak lo nafak. If the Torah would not have put it back into the klal of asham, I would have thought that whatever it was taken out for, that's what we do, and everything else we don't do. Meaning, it was included in the klal of asham. We have rules of korban asham. This asham should be no different. Once we see that, oh, this is different, so unless the Torah says something to indicate that I relate it back to the klal, it's different, and I would have thought that it only has the rules that we said, and it doesn't have any of the other rules of asham. So now relating that to yibum, I would have thought that achot isha, eshet ach, a brother's wife, I would have thought that it's whatever. No, I would have thought. I do understand, because it's something that was in the klal of arayot, and then it was taken out of the klal to teach me this chidush of yibum, and it was never related back to the klal to tell me that should apply elsewhere. So either way, the Gemara is still, we're still back at square one. How do we know that aseh is dochel lo ta'aseh, that has karet? Or even the real general question is, we made a drasha, right? We started with a drasha from the word aleha. We learned from the word aleha that there is no yibum by arayot. So why do I need this drasha? Obviously, there should be no yibum by arayot. What's the reason that I need this drasha? That there means that I would have that means that I would have had a havamin. I would have thought that there is yibum by arayot. Why would I have thought that? So says the Gemara. So where were we up to now? So hachanami here too. Hi eshet ach de ishtaria. The ishtara ishtari shar arayot lo, right? So over here also eshet ach, that was made allowed. There's a heter for eshet ach of yibum, but other arayot no. So the Gemara at the end of the day falls off the answer. So Ella, rather, says the Gemara, that all we kind of did yesterday. So Ella salka da'atach amina tete b'mematzinu. The Gemara suggests the following: we should learn from a mematzinu. What's a mematzinu? Me'eshetach. Mematzinu is, just like we find by this case, we can apply it to other cases. Meaning, originally we tried to learn from a principle. We tried to say that we have davar sheyatza min haklal, something that was exited from the klal lilamed, lo lilamed al atzmo yatza, ela lilamed al kol haklal kulo yatza. Right, originally that's what we wanted to learn. We wanted to use a principle and say something that was excluded from the klal and it's coming to teach something, you relate it back to the whole klal. Then we said, no, this is different. This is similar to something that's brought out to teach b'dvar chadash. But now we're trying a different avenue. We want to learn from mematzinu, which is pretty simple and straightforward. That the same way achot isha, I keep on saying achot isha. The same way that eshet ach, a brother's wife, a person is allowed to do yibum, so too all the arayot a person is allowed to do yibum. Right, why don't we just say that? If yibum overrides the isur of erva of brother's wife, then it should override the isur of erva of any erva. What should be the difference? So the Gemara says, Teiti b'mematzinu. Salka da'atach amina teiti b'mematzinu. Me'eshet ach. Ma eshet ach miyavema. Just like eshet ach, there's a mitzvah of yibum which overrides, we overlook the isur erva. Meaning generally a brother's wife is off limits. Even if his brother dies, even if the brother divorces her, if there's kids and he dies, it's off limits. Yibum is a mitzvah which is telling me that it overrides the isur of brother's wife. So af achot isha tityabem. So too other arayot. For example, achot isha, a person's sister-in-law. If you have two brothers married to two sisters, one of them dies, so there should be yibum also. So the Gemara says, no, that's not midami. Hatam chad isura hachatre isure. By the case of brother's wife, there's only one isur on the lady. She's brother's wife. So yibum overrides that one isur. But by two brothers who are married to two sisters, the brother's wife is also his wife's sister. So there's two isurim on the lady. Meaning when there's an additional erva here, there's two isurim on the lady. It's the brother's wife plus some other erva. So you can't learn that because if it was the brother's wife where it's one isur, the mitzvah of yibum would override, so too it should override when there's two isurim. That you can't say. So the Gemara says no, there's a little bit of a knetch here. Ma'u detema ho'il ve'ishteri ishteri. I would have thought to say that ho'il ve'ishteri ishteri, since it became mutar, one thing became mutar, the other thing also became mutar. Since the isur of brother's wife was lifted, the other isur also we lift. So where do we find such a thing? So the Gemara says we do find such a thing. So umina timra de'amrinan hoil ve'ishteri ishteri. So this is where it gets a little bit confusing. We're going to need this. How do I know, where do we see a source of this concept of hoil ve'ishteri ishteri? Just because something is mutar for one isur is lifted, another isur is also lifted. So, Detanya. So, mitzorah shechal shmini shel be'erva pesach. Let's take a moment to, everyone has this little map that I gave them. This paper. This paper has on, I know it's a little bit faded, the printer is running out of toner. So, there's isurim for certain people who are temeim to go into the camps, which in the Beit HaMikdash there's three levels. There's Machane Yisrael. Machane Yisrael is the entire walled city of Yerushalayim. Okay? Then you have, and Machane Yisrael, there are certain people who are sent chutz lamachane. A mitzora is sent chutz lamachane. He has to go outside of Machane Yisrael. Fine. Then you have Har Habayit. Har Habayit is the next level of Kedusha. That's called Machane Livia. There, not only is a Mitzora not allowed to go, also a Baal Keri is not allowed to go. And then you have Machane Shechina. Machane Shechina really is, if you look at the diagram of the Beit HaMikdash, no, the whole Azara on top. If you look at, forget about the part that says Machane Shechina Derabanan. That we're not dealing with. Right where the stairs are, if you can see the stairs leading up to the second section of the Beit HaMikdash, right? The entrance is on the bottom. The entrance is on the bottom of the Beit HaMikdash. There's the Ezrat Nashim, which is where it says Machane Shechina Derabanan, and then there's a set of stairs. Everyone sees that?
Mm-hmm. In the middle.
Yeah. So those set of stairs in the middle lead into the Machane Shechina Deoraita. That whole area is the Machane Shechina.
What's in it?
That's the Mizbeach, that's where they do Shechita, that's the Kodesh Kadashim is further in there. So that's Machane Shechina. That, if someone who's Tameh Met or Baal Keri goes in there, that's Karet. That's Isur Karet. So, okay, so, and this doorway, that's called Shar Nikanor. Where the steps are, that doorway is called Shar Nikanor. Now, for the Mitzora, when somebody would have tzarat, so he had a whole 7-day purification process. On the 8th day, he would go to the mikveh. 7th day, he would have to go to the mikveh. And on the 8th day, he has to bring a korban, and he's good. Now, for his korban, he had to get the blood sprinkled on his thumb, his right thumb and right toe and right earlobe. Now, let's focus more on the right thumb and the right toe. So, there's an isur for the blood. The blood it has to be done lifnei Hashem. Lifnei Hashem means in the Machane Shechina. Problem is,
He's not allowed to
he
go.
can't go there because he's still not fully tahor. But in order for him to be tahor, he has to go there. So, so the Gemara is going to explain. He stands in the doorway, and he just sticks his finger and his foot inside, and so he's not fully going in. And they sprinkle it on his finger and on his foot. So,
What, through the doorway?
yeah, he's standing in the doorway, and he sticks his finger inside, and he sticks his foot inside, and they apply the blood. So that's how the mitzora on the 8th day. That's how he becomes tahor. Now, there is a machloket just to be aware of, in which is going to come up also. Bia b'miktzat shmei bia or lo shmei bia. What does that mean? If someone does not fully enter, he just sticks his hand in. Is that karet also or not? If a tameh fully enters the Machane Shechina, that's karet 100%. Now let's say he doesn't fully enter, he just sticks his hand in, or he just sticks his foot in. Is that karet also or not? This is machloket. Ula learns that it's karet, so Ula has to explain how this is all working.
How he gets tahor.
Yeah. So Ula holds that we live. It's true in general. It's karet, but over here it's mutar for him because this is the way that he has to become tahor. So it's mutar for him. Okay. So now let's discuss the following case. So
even if you go to Machane Shechina de Rabbanan, still you get a
no. That there's no karet. That midioraita is not even machane shechina. That's part of machane levia.
You could go over there and do the process, yeah?
Yeah, but lifnei Hashem is in the actual machane shechina deoraita. I mean, the pasuk says this whole process has to be done lifnei Hashem, which means in the machane shechina deoraita, not in the Ezrat Nashim, which is the bottom part.
So that means it's not correct. If the guy goes there, because Hashem says, if you want to come in front of me and do the process, then doesn't have to be
Right. Okay. So
actually
we're gonna.
correct.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So we're gonna get to that. That's very good. That's what's gonna come out according to Ula. Okay. So let's see the case over here. So this is the case that I told you, but with an interesting little knetch. So says we're trying to prove a concept of hoil ve'ishtri. Since one isur was lifted, another isur also is lifted. So, Detanya, mitzora shechal shemini shelo be'erev Pesach. So this mitzora, his 8th day is erev Pesach. Means he's gonna become tahor. Right now it's the morning of the 8th day. He wakes up. He's like, oh, Baruch Hashem, I could bring korban Pesach today. I'm gonna go become tahor, and I could bring korban Pesach. V'ra'a keri bo bayom. Problem is, he became a bal keri. That day he became a bal keri. V'taval, and he went to the mikveh for it. So now he has 2 tumas on him. One is tuma of mitzora, which he just needs to bring his korban to fully remove that. And the other is tuma of keri, which he went to the mikveh, but he needs to wait till nightfall until that's gone. So problem is, that's preventing him from bringing his korban pesach.
Because he's about Kurt. That's what he told him.
Yeah, so Amru Chachamim. Now, there's an... Also, we have to keep in mind, there's an aseh. The isur of a Baal Keri going on Harabayit is an isur aseh. The pasuk says, V'yishalechu min hamachane. You have to send him out. So it's not a lav, and there's no karet. It's an isur aseh. So there's an isur aseh for the Baal Keri to be in Harabayit, but there's an isur karet for him to go into the machane shechina. So amru chachamim, afa pi she'en tivul yom acher nichnas. Even though in general, someone who went to the mikveh, before nightfall, before they're fully tahor, they're not allowed to enter Harabayit. A Baal Keri who he's a Baal Keri and then he goes to the mikveh, he's not allowed to enter Harabayit until the next day. Ze nichnas. This guy who it's his last chance to make the korban pesach. It's the 8th day, and it's he's just becoming tar from his sarat, and he became a Baal Keri, and today's the day to bring the korban pesach. For him, they allow him to go. Why? Mutav sheyavo aseh sheyesh bo karet, ve'yidche aseh she'en bo karet. We prefer him to the aseh that has karet overrides the other aseh. Meaning he has 2 asehs. One aseh to leave Harabayit. Another aseh to bring a korban pesach. So the aseh of bringing a korban pesach is karet. If he doesn't do that, it's a karet. The aseh of going on Harabayit without entering Machaneh.
Why does he have the aseh there?
What, to do korban pesach? Okay, good question. There's an aseh on everybody. It's just you're saying because if he's tameh, he shouldn't have the aseh at all. Right. So that's a good question. Let's. I mean, generally, the simple way of getting out of it is there's an aseh on everybody. Just he has another aseh that's preventing him from doing it. But in this case, since korban pesach is karet, he should fulfill the
So many
aseh.
times where like you'll have an aseh to do something, but you can't do it because you're not qualified. Let's say you have an aseh to put on tefillin and your father passes away.
Right. No.
So I'm saying, like, just because you have the aseh to do it, you have the lot aseh as well. Like, what you shouldn't, like, you should be mourning over. I mean, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you had the aseh to put on tefillin this morning, but your father passed away this morning. So, like, what do you do?
Right.
Like,
Right. So over there is a clear cut. There's a clear cut thing that onen has certain isurim on him. So one of these isurim is.
why doesn't it docha though? Why doesn't aseh have tefillin docha that though?
Okay, that's a good question. But okay, fine. So let's continue. So So we're saying mutav sheyavo aseh sheyesh bo karet ve'yitche aseh she'en bo karet. So in this case, it's better for him to come into Harabayit and bring his korban pesach, because for the korban pesach you don't need to go into Machaneh Shechina. Korban pesach is shechted in the azar, not in the Machaneh Shechina. In the lower part of it, the place that's Machaneh Shechina derabanan. Ezrat Nashim, yeah. So he says, Mutav sheyavo aseh sheyesh bo karet, ve'yitche aseh she'en bo karet. It's preferable that the aseh of karet, which is korban pesach, overrides the aseh that doesn't have karet, which is the balkari being sent out of the camp.
Why does this stuff go when the guy's a saras? So, meaning, let's say the guy's is it the same case?
This part may not be. But for what we need, for the Hoil V'Ishtri part, which we're going to get to in a minute, we need it to be specifically a case of tzarat. So Rabbi Yochanan, Devar Torah afilu aseh letbe. So Rabbi Yochanan says, I'll even tell you a bigger chidush. There's not even really an aseh mideoraita for this balkari who went to the mikveh to leave Harabayit. Since he already went to the mikveh, it's not really an aseh. Shneimar, pasuk says, "Vayamod Yehoshafat bekal Yehuda lifnei chatzer chadasha." It says Yehoshafat stood in front of the chatzer chadasha. My chatzer chadasha. What's the new chatzer? Amar Rabbi Yochanan she chidushu bat devarim. They said a chidush over there. V'amru tivul yom lo yikanes lamachaneh leviyah. They made a new rule that a balkari who went to the mikveh before nightfall, he can't come into the Harabayit. But really, mideoraita, he's allowed to go there. So the Gemara is basically saying, this kind of answers the questions that you were asking. Mideoraita, really, he's allowed to be in there because he went to the mikveh. Midorabanan, they said that, you can't come in there until nightfall. But mideoraita, the balkari, for the balkari issue, he's allowed to be on Harabayit. And he has a chiyuv to bring a korban pesach. So the chiyuv of korban pesach will allow him to come to Harabayit. Now the problem is, how is he going to become tahor? Because again, he's also a mitzora. In order to become tahor from the mitzora, he has to stick his hands into the machaneh shechina. So fine, great. As far as mitzora is concerned, that's the process that he's got to do. But he has a different tuma on him also. He's a balkari. He went to the mikveh, fine, but balkari tivul yom, a balkari that went to the mikveh on that day, there's an isur for him to go into the machaneh shechina, and according to Ula, even just to stick his hands in. So the Gemara says, "Va'amar Ula ma'atam." Ula says, "What's the reason that he's allowed to go through this whole process of becoming tahor?" Ho'il vehutar letzara'ato, hutar lekerio. Since he's mutar, meaning he has tzarat, but that tumat tzarat is lifted for him to be able to stick his hands into the machaneh shechina to get the blood on his fingers. So too, it's lifted. The tumat of keri is lifted. So what do you see? This concept, ho'il ve'ishtri ishtri. Since one isur was lifted for a certain purpose, the other isur also is lifted. Right? So the application here is the isur of entering the machane shechina is lifted for the tumat mitzora on him. So it's also lifted for the tumat sarat. Once it's being lifted, there's a heter to go into the machane shechina, or to stick his hands into the machane shechina for the tumat sarat. There's also a heter for the tumat keri, which came afterwards. So the Gemara wants to suggest the same thing should be by yibum. Since there's a heter for brother's wife, so there's a heter also on the other isur of wife sister. Let's say it's the same person, brother's wife and wife sister are the same person. Okay, so two brothers marry two sisters. So there's a heter when brother one dies. There's a heter to perform the mitzvah of yibum. There's a heter to marry the brother's wife. Since that heter went on that woman for the isur brother's wife, the heter went on her also for the isur of wife sister. Right? There's two, just like this tzara guy. There's two isurim on him. He's tzarua and he's a bal keri, so he can't go in. Since there's a heter for the tzarat tuma, there's a heter for the bal keri tuma. So we want to say the same thing. Since there's a heter for the eshet ach, the brother's wife aspect of this woman, there's a heter for the achodisha. So let's read a few more lines just to finish the inyan. So the Gemara says no, nothing doing, not a good avenue. Why? Tenach hecha denasa met v'achakach nasa chai. So okay, let's just explain and then it'll become easier to read. So the Gemara says, in the case of the tzarat, the guy first had a heter. He was ready to bring his korban. He woke up 8th day, ready to bring his korban. He had a heter on that moment. There was a heter for him to stick his hands into the azara. Then afterwards, some other isur came on him. So since there was a pre-existing heter, then the second isur doesn't stop him from being able to put his hands in. But in the case of yibum, it's different. The Gemara says, it makes sense if you have two brothers. There's the brother who's now dead and the brother who's still alive. So it makes sense, this would apply in a case where the dead brother, the brother who's currently dead, married the woman first, and then afterwards the living brother married. In which case, first she was eshet ach, and then afterwards the other isur of wife sister came. I mean, two brothers married two sisters. Brother one is the one that died first. So that in that case, that would be similar to this case of Ula, because first the dead brother, the brother that's currently dead, married, and first there's a heter of eshet ach, meaning she's only an eshet ach, and then afterwards the other erva comes. Right? Demigo de ishtri isur eshet ach, ishtri nami isur achot isha. Then you could say, okay, once the isur of brother's wife was lifted, so too achot isha is wife's sister is not going to stop the yibum. That isur will also be lifted. Ela nasai chai v'achakach nasa met isur achot isha kadim. But if in the case where the brother who's not dead married first, so first that woman was his wife's sister, and then his brother married, then you don't have this logic over here. V'afilu nasa met and nami. Even in the case where the dead brother married first, tenach echad nasa met v'met v'achakach nasa chai. It makes sense only in a case where the brother who died first married and then died. So now this woman is there's a heter on her right now to do yibum, and then that guy marries the sister. Right? Everybody chops the case. First brother dies, and now this woman is fitting to do yibum. Before he does yibum, he marries her sister, and now she's gonna be asura on him. But she first had a heter, so in that case you could say since the heter was on her first with regards to brother's wife, so the other isur doesn't prevent the mitzvah of yibum.
Who married his sister?
His brother. The brother.
What's happening?
Two brothers married two sisters.
Okay.
Brother number one married a sister, and he and he died. That sister falls to Yibum to brother number 2. Then brother number 2 marries the other sister. So first there was a heter of this woman to do Yibum, and then he married her sister and made her into an erva. So in that case, that's similar to Ula's case. First there was a heter, and then I just have to finish one more line. So the chazyale de bene bene. In that case, there's a heter on the woman in the time being, and that's when we would say this logic of Ula. Ella nasa met velo met v'achar kach nasa chai. But in a case where the brother died, the dead brother married first, he was still alive when the living brother married. Lo echaziyale klal. That in that case, it was never fitting. There was never a possibility of yibum. There was never a heter on this woman. Since there was never a heter on her, it doesn't fall into the case of Ula. Milo modi Ula she'im ra'a keri belel shmini she'en machnis yado lebaonot shelo yetze b'sha'a she'aya shelo yatsa b'sha'a shehi ru'uya lahavi ba'korban. Ula would agree when if a guy became Baal Keri before he had a heter to put his hands in, right? If he became a Baal Keri before the 8th day,
it would have postponed it.
It would have postponed it. The only reason the Baal Keri doesn't do anything is because he already had a heter to put his hands in. Then the Baal Keri doesn't take it away. So that's the okay, fine. So Adkan is Divrei Hagmara.
It's very complicated.
Yeah, he's a little bit complicated.